Welcome into the NFL podcast with Alec Pecano on Tuesday, September 17th. Today's show is a busy show, so we're going to get right into it. We got a lot to talk about today. I'm going to give you my first power rankings of the season, first top 10 power rankings of the season, my picks for week 4, week 3 upsets, locks, game picks, and I'm going to talk about some other stuff. And the first thing I'm going to talk about, and we're going to talk about it right now, we're going to start with this. I will recap some of the games from Sunday and talk about Thursday Night Football. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the Dolphins and the Bills. The Bills ended up winning 31-10. But the part of the game I want to take a look at is when Tua Tagovailoa got hurt. And I want to put something out there right now for Tua. Tua, please make the right decision. I know there's conflicting reports out there right now that you don't plan to retire. But if I was you, I would strongly, and I don't know if it's, and again, y'all can tell me what you think in the comments below. But Tua, I think this is your 4th concussion in 5 years. I think you really need to consider, I'm not going to say retiring, but I would just maybe consider, if you're going to run, slide. Because I don't want to see you retire. You're a good quarterback. But to be safe, I would rather see you play longer. And if you can, slide. Like I just said, I don't want to have to see you retire at a young age. Because you're still young. And you're probably one of the better. I know I pick on you too sometimes, but you are a really good young quarterback. It's just you need to, and all these quarterbacks, not just Tua, some of these quarterbacks, they need to learn how to slide. Jaden Daniels, Tua, CJ Stroud, you guys need to learn how to slide. Because if you don't, you're going to end up like Tua, and you're going to end up with repeat concussions. And I don't want to see that. That is not something I want to see. Now we're going to get to game recaps for the NFL this week. From week 2. Scores. So like I said, we're going to start with the Thursday night game. And we're going to start with Bills and Dolphins. So, Miami, and we're going to start with the Dolphins side of it. I think the Dolphins are going to be, they did bring in Tyler Huntley to back up Skylar Thompson. But Skylar Thompson is going to be the starting quarterback. And I'm going to say this. I would be worried if I was the Dolphins. Because you're not putting Tua on IR. But we've seen this Skylar Thompson. We've seen what Skylar Thompson is, I'm not going to say capable of. But we've seen what happens when he plays. The Dolphins offense takes a step backwards. And I'm downgrading, for fantasy purposes, I'm downgrading all Miami Dolphins. All their receivers. The guy I'm going to be upgrading in fantasy for the Dolphins is the running back room. Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Wright, Jeff Wilson. Because I think the Dolphins are going to have to run the football a lot more here with the injury to Tua. And let's check out the receiving for the Dolphins. So you had Achane, who had 7 for 69. 7 receptions, 69 yards and a touchdown. You had Jonnu Smith, 6 for 53. Jalen Waddle, 4 for 41. Hill only had 3 catches. Grant DeBose had a catch. Jeff Wilson had 2 catches. Durham Smythe had a catch. Robbie Chosen had a catch. And that was it. I mean, you had Julian Hill was out there for a couple plays. You had Braxton Berrios. And then the Miami defense got torched. David Long was targeted 11 times. He had no sacks, 2 TFLs, no QB hits. Jordan Brooks was targeted 6 times. Jordan Poyer 4 times, 3 solo tackles. Kendall Fuller targeted 4 times. Javon Holland targeted 4 times. Jalen Ramsey 3. Kader Coho targeted twice. Zach Sealer targeted twice. Quentin Bell targeted twice. Chop Robinson targeted twice. Marcus May targeted twice. Calais Campbell 1 time. Robbie Chosen 1 time. Emmanuel Ogbah 1 time. Braxton Berrios once. Deshaun Hand once. Elijah Campbell. And Jonnu Smith. No interceptions. So now we're going to take a look at the Bills side of this. And I'm going to give you some takeaways. So Josh Allen went 13 of 19 for 139 yards, as you can see, and a touchdown. Okay. With a 79.2% QBR, which I consider that good. Then you had James Cook, who had 11 carries, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You had Ray Davis, which this is the thing that I'm worried about, is James Cook losing touches to Ray Davis. And if you look at the box score, Ray Davis had 9 carries for 29 yards, 3.2 yards per attempt, average. And then you had Khalil Shakir with a carry, 2 carries for Josh Allen, 1 for Ty Johnson, 2 for -2 yards for Mitchell Trubisky. The receivers. So Shakir had 5 for 54. On 5 targets. Ty Johnson had a catch for 33 yards on 2 targets. 4 targets for Dalton Kincaid. 4 catches, 33 yards. James Cook, 1 target, 1 catch, 17 yards. Curtis Samuel had 2 targets. Mac Hollins had a target. Barles Scantling had a target. Keon Coleman had 1 target. Which, this is the thing I don't understand. You spent a high second round pick on Keon Coleman, and he only has 1 target? What are you doing, Josh Allen? Okay, I understand Khalil Shakir's been there longer, but you got to get your number 1. He's supposed to be your number 1 receiver. You got to get him more involved in the offense. You just can't have him standing there not getting targeted. My takeaways from this game is the Bills' rush offense is pretty good, but you might start seeing a 50-50 split between James Cook and Ray Davis. And then you got to get Kincaid. You need to target the tight end more and Dalton Kincaid. You need to get more targets to Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir. And if you do that, you're going to keep winning games. The next game I'm going to review is Dallas and New Orleans. I'm going to say this. these first 2 weeks with the Saints, I did not see this coming at all. I did not expect the Saints to be this good this year. I might regret where I put them in my NFC South standings prediction before the season. Derek Carr, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Okay. 243 yards and a 99.4 QBR. Now, here's the issue I have. Can the Saints keep this up? Because this week, week 3, they got Philadelphia. And Philly is not going to be happy. They got beat by Atlanta last night. And I think Philly's going to be upset. And New Orleans better be ready for a fight. Alvin Kamara had a heck of a game. 20 carries, 115 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then you had Jamal Williams get 8 carries. I'm not worried at all about this becoming a split backfield between Kamara and Jamal Williams. This was a blowout. That's the reason Jamal Williams was in the game at the end of the game. Rashid Shaheed had a big game too. 4 catches, 96 yards on 4 targets. And then you had Chris Olave, 4 for 81 and 6 targets. 2 catches on 3 targets for Kamara and a receiving touchdown. And then Taysom Hill had 1 catch for 1 yard on 1 target. And then they didn't target Adam Prentice at all. Now we get to the Cowboys. So overall, the Saints had a really good game. Again, like I said, now we're going to get to the Cowboys side of it. So the Cowboys. Dak went 27-39 for 293, a touchdown and 2 picks. Dak struggled. And that's putting it nicely. Dak struggled. Dak also had 2 carries for 12 yards. But let's look at the rushing stats for the Cowboys. And you notice a big-time difference between Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott. Dowdle had 7 carries for 30 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. And if you look at Zeke, 6 carries, 16 yards, 2.7. To me, it looks like Zeke is losing touches here to Rico Dowdle. And I think we need to keep an eye on this the rest of the season and see what happens. If Dowdle keeps eating into the touches for Zeke, that means Rico Dowdle is going to be the RB1. Now, for the receiving, so CeeDee Lamb had 7 targets, 4 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Then you had Jalen Tolbert, who had a really bad rookie season. It looks like he learned some stuff in the offseason, and he had 9 targets to lead the team and targets this week. 9 targets, 6 catches, 82 yards, no touchdown, but he averaged 13 yards per catch. I think Jalen Tolbert is the number 2 option behind CeeDee Lamb. Then you had Luke Schoonmaker, 6 targets, 6 catches, 43 yards. He's filling in for the injured Jake Ferguson. Then you had Rico Dowdle, 5 targets, 4 catches, 29 yards. Brandon Cooks, 2 catches for 19 yards and 2 targets. 3 targets for Zeke, 2 catches, 16 yards. 3 targets for Jalen Brooks, 1 catch, 10 yards. Deuce Vaughn had a target for one catch on 1 target for 6 yards. 4 targets, 2 catches, 4 yards for Kevontae Turpin. And then Brevin Spanford, 1 target, no catches, no yards. Dak had a fumble. Jalen Tolbert had a fumble. Eric Kendricks had a decent game. I would say the guy in the Dallas defense that did really good, I can't really find any. Now, on New Orleans side, Pete Warner had 5 solo tackles, none for loss. You had Carl Granderson with a sack and a half a sack for Chase Young, which Chase Young is trying to prove himself here. He's had a 1-year deal with New Orleans, and I like that signing for the Saints. I really do. But overall, this was just how do I put it? Ugly game for the Cowboys, and I don't think it's going to get any better for them. I really don't. It might, but we'll see. And in the last game, I'm going to go review is this one be between the Buccaneers and the Lions. I watched this entire game on Sunday. A well-fought game between both teams. The Buccaneers ended up winning. Baker had a touchdown and an interception, under 200 yards passing. He was sacked 5 times for a loss of 39 yards, 51.1% QBR, which, okay, hit or miss. Then he had one touchdown on the ground, 1 through the air. So he had 1 carry for 5 carries, 34 yards and a touchdown. And then you had Bucky Irving. Now, this is interesting to me. If you look at the number of carries Rachaad White had, 10 carries, 18 yards. Look at the number of carries Bucky Irving had, 7 carries, 22 yards. This, I think, as the season goes on, and I've heard it from other people too, this is going to become more of a split backfield. 50-50 split between Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. That is why the Buccaneers took Bucky Irving in the 4th round. Now we get to the receiving, and you look at, so Chris Godwin, 8 targets, 7 catches, 117 yards and a touchdown. I can safely say I think Chris Godwin is entirely back from his injury he had last year. You had Mike Evans, 6 targets, 3 catches, 42 yards. Okay. Just ho-hum, another day at the office for him. Because he was blanket coveraged. Then you had Jalen McMillan. 1 catch, 21 yards on 2 targets. 1 target for Rachaad White. 1 catch, 5 yards. 2 targets, no catches for Cade Otton. Baker Mayfield and Justin School. Baker Mayfield had 2 fumbles. He recovered one of them, and School recovered the other. Defensively, Jordan Whitehead had 8 solo tackles, 1 pass deflection. The guy I want to there's 2 defensive players on the Buccaneers I want to give a shout out to. One being Servassier Dennis, 6 solo tackles, but he had some big tackles, especially on the last defensive drive for the Buccaneers. And then I'm looking at Christian Izien. Let me get down there, Chris Godwin. Christian Izien, 5 solo tackles, 2 pass deflections, and he was pressed into duty last minute because the Bucs were without Antoine Winfield in this game. And Christian Izien played one heck of a game. He did have one of the 2 interceptions for the Buccaneers. The other one was Zion McCollum, who he's another guy I want to give a shout out to on defense. he was another guy that was questionable to play because he was in concussion protocol. And he cleared on Saturday. McCollum and Izzy had played one whale of a game for the Buccaneers on defense. Overall, the Bucs played a really good game. Now we get to the Lions. And there was some good bright spots in the loss for the Lions. You had Jared Goff, he 34-55 for 370 yards, 2 picks, okay. 36.4% QBR. That's not a really good QBR, to be honest. But he struggled. And then you had Jahmyr Gibbs, 13 carries, 84 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. You had David Montgomery, 11 for 35 with 1 touchdown. Jameson Williams had a carry, 2 carries for Jared Goff for 5 yards. Then the receivers. Look at the distinct difference between Amon-Ra and Jameson and then everybody else. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 19 targets, 11 catches, 119 yards. And then you had Jameson Williams, who through the first 2 weeks of the season, I have been impressed with. Because we know last year he struggled to get on the field. He had injuries. But 5 for 79 on 11 targets. Then you had 4 catches from David Montgomery for 35 yards on 4 targets. 3 from Khalif Raymond also on 4 targets. 7 catches, 22 yards on 7 targets for Jahmyr Gibbs. Sione Vaki, 1 target, 1 catch, 17 yards. Sam Laporta, 3 targets, 2 catches, 13 yards. Tim Patrick, 3 targets, 2 catches, 12 yards. Now, the Lions, they had some good opportunities in this game to take the lead, but the Bucs defense just stepped up and kept them out of the end zone. And now we will get to our upset picks, game picks, and locks of the week. We are 15-21 on the season. We went 4-12 last week on picks, which was not too good. But here we go with our picks as well as the first. So here's my top 10 power rankings after week 2. At number 10, I've got the Detroit Lions. I still think the Lions are a top 10 team. And yes, you don't see Buffalo on here. They're just outside my top 10 at number 11. But back to the Lions. I think the Lions are going to be perfectly fine here. This, for the Lions, they've got a lot of good going on. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff. Their defense is good. Their defense held the Bucs under 30 points. And I thought the Buccaneers were going to put up 30 points. But they didn't. My number 9 team is the Minnesota Vikings. And I think Sam Darnold, and I might get criticized for this, I think Sam Darnold is going to be just fine. I think he fits in the scheme in Minnesota just fine. And the thing was, he wasn't supposed to start. It was supposed to be J.J. McCarthy. But McCarthy got injured, which, again, we don't wish injuries upon anybody. But I think the Vikings are going to be a surprise team. My number 8 team is the Atlanta Falcons. And yes, I know they struggled in week 1. Week 2 was a totally different story. Kirk Cousins, he looked like the old Kirk Cousins to an extent. And they look like the Falcons look like a completely different team in week 2. Number 7, the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm going to go on a little bit of I'm not going to say rant, but a tangent here for a second. Why did you sign Derrick Henry if you're not going to use him? Why did you sign Derrick Henry if you're not going to use him, Baltimore? Now, don't get me wrong, the Ravens defense is really good, but why is, and then you have one of the best tight ends in the NFL, and Mark Andrews. You barely used him in week 1, and I can understand because of the coverage. But in week 2, he somewhat got back into the fold. I understand he was recovering from being in a car accident. At number 6, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Chargers are a team. Jim Harbaugh knows how to coach. I give him credit there. They signed J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in the offseason. Let Keenan Allen go. Let Mike Williams go. Quentin Johnston may be having his breakout. Maybe all it took was to get a different coaching staff in there. Maybe that's all it took. But I like the way the Chargers are playing right now. They're running the football, and that's what we've known them to do, is being a running team. At number 5, I got yes, I know at the beginning of the show, I know I talked about the Dolphins and how they might fall off a little bit. I still give them credit where credit is due. I think they might be fine without Tua for however long he's out because they got a good defense. Their defense is good, even though their defense gave up 31 points to the Bills. I still think that their defense is going to be good. And then you got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. So I think they will be just fine. I think they will be just fine. At number 4, yes, I know I was kind of harsh on them. It's the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy is a good coach, and I think Dallas will figure things out, and they will be one of the top contenders in the NFC. And this is still a filling out process. I'm doing these power rankings every 2 weeks. So you won't see them in next week's video. You'll see them in the video after that. But the Cowboys, I think they will be fine. At number 3, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yes, the Buccaneers are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Legitimate. Which means I think they can make the Super Bowl this year. Chris Godwin looks like he might be usurping Mike Evans as the number 1 receiver for the Buccaneers. That defense held a really good Lions team to 16 points. My number 2 team this week and my power rankings is the Houston Texans. You give them, they looked, I say this, they looked good against the Bears, even though it was a lower scoring game than what people expected. But I think that the Texans are the team to beat in the AFC South. I'm not going to say the complete AFC because my number 1 team is probably the team to beat in the AFC, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. And it hurts me to say this. The Chiefs look better than ever, even though sometimes they do get help from the referees. Example, their game against the Bengals the other day. But I still think that the Chiefs are the team to beat in that division. Now we get to my week 3 upset picks for the NFL. We're going to start with the Chicago Bears. I have the Chicago Bears plus 1 point +1 to upset the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Bears stuck around last week with the Texans on Sunday Night Football. I think this game for the Bears, I think there's a lot more potential here for the upset for the Bears to upset Indianapolis. Now, does it happen? Possibly. Do I think it happens? No. You never know. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. My number 2 upset is the Los Angeles Chargers to upset the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Chargers go into Pittsburgh, I believe. Will they pull the upset here? I think they can. I think there's a better chance of this upset happening than the Bears beating the Colts, but we'll see. And my number 3 upset is the Green Bay Packers, led by Malik Willis, to upset +2.5 points to upset the Titans. And that Chargers line is +2 right now. I think the Packers have a really good chance here to upset the Titans. The Titans have played horrible their first 2 weeks of the season, and I think it might continue this week, and that would lead to an upset. Now we get to my locks of the week. My first one is the Las Vegas Raiders -5.5 to beat the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Panthers did make a QB swap, and I will talk about that at the end of this segment. But I still think the Raiders are the better team here, and I think the Raiders will beat the Panthers. Next, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers -1.5 to beat the Broncos. The Broncos are another team that are in kind of a rebuild. Bo Nix looks like the future. He's going to struggle, and I think he struggles again this week against the Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers, I think they will win this game. I don't know by how much. If it's more than 6 points, they obviously cover. And then I got the Baltimore Ravens -1. Right now, these lines could change throughout the week, but this is what it was when I made these last night. I have the Ravens -1 to beat the Cowboys. I think the Ravens get a win here and go to 1-2, and they beat the Cowboys. Now, here are my game picks. Thursday night and Sunday early slate. So Thursday night, we got the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. I am taking the New York Jets. The Patriots are in a rebuild. I do think this might be I think the Jets win, but I think it's closer than people think. I think it's a close game, but the Jets end up winning maybe 24-17. Then you go to the Sunday early window, and you've got the Philadelphia Eagles and the New Orleans Saints. And I talked about this game earlier and how the Saints have to go, how they play Philadelphia this week. It's at New Orleans. But that does not change my pick. I think the Eagles win this game. Actually, I'm confident enough that the Eagles win this game 35-28. Next, we've got the Houston Texans and the Minnesota Vikings. Two teams that were both in my power rankings. But I think the Texans win this game. And it's more to do with not only CJ Stroud, but it's more to do with their defense. I think their defense gets the job done and pressures Sam Darnold enough to maybe where Darnold throws a pick or two and the defense gets like 4 or 5 sacks. And then the next game is the Green Bay Packers and Tennessee Titans. I have the Packers winning, but I think it's going to be low scoring, maybe a 17-10, 24-17 game. with the Packers winning, and then we've got the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. And Browns fans, you're going to be excited with who I'm picking. I am picking the Browns here. The Giants are terrible. They're horrible. And I think the Browns win this game, and I think they blow out the Giants. And I think it's going to be 35-14 Cleveland. Now we get to the Sunday late window, plus Sunday night and Monday night. So we start with the late window on Sunday. We've got the Seahawks, the Miami Dolphins, and the Seattle Seahawks. Mike Macdonald, defensive-minded head coach. I think the Seahawks I'm very confident that the Seahawks beat the Dolphins in Seattle at Lumen Field. Now, it'd be a different story if this game was in Miami. Maybe I would pick the Dolphins, but it's in Seattle, the 12th man. And I think, like I just said a minute ago, I'm very 95% confident that the Dolphins lose this game to Seattle. Next, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders and the Carolina Panthers. And I think Las Vegas is going to win this game. And it might be a blowout. And that's sad to say. I think it's going to be a blowout. I don't know what the final score is going to be. I think Gardner Minshew has a big game against that Carolina defense. And that's that. We got the Lions and the Cardinals. Detroit Lions and Arizona Cardinals. I'm taking the Detroit Lions. I think the Arizona Cardinals are a 1 week wonder. I think the Lions get back in the win column here, and they beat the brakes off of the Cardinals. Then you got the 49ers and the Rams. Two teams dealing with injuries. The 49ers are without Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. The Rams are without Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. They're number one and number two receiver. Give me the San Francisco 49ers to win a close game then. And then we've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Sunday Night Football, we got the Chiefs and the Falcons. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs. And then on Monday night, we've got two games this week on Monday night. We've got the Jags, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to make this one easy. Give me the Buffalo Bills to put up another 30-burger and beat the Jags. And then we got the Commanders and the Bengals. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals to get a win and go to 1-2 on the year. And now some QB changes in the NFL. The Dolphins are going to Skylar Thompson, obviously, as we know, with the injury to Tua. And then we've got the Panthers going to Andy Dalton and benching Bryce Young. Those are the only two QB changes I'm aware of. We're going to have a whole new starting wide receiver group for the Rams going for the next few weeks. Jordan Whittington, Tutu Atwell, and Demarcus Robinson with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both out. And it sounds like Cooper Kupp is probably going to go on IR. And I'm worried for the Rams because not only are their top two wide receivers out, their entire offensive line's hurt. So they've had backups across the board at offensive line. And that kind of scares me. And I'm worried for the Rams, for their players' safety. And also, if you found worth in this video, please remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a future NFL podcast episode or a future episode of the Fourth and Long podcast, which I will have two Fourth and Long podcast episodes today. As you know by my community poll, My co-host is not able to make the show this week, so I will be running the podcast solo. The Fourth and Long podcast by myself. And the other thing is, to become an MVP, it is very simple. All you have to do is subscribe. Subscribe and you have joined the family and you are now an MVP once you subscribe. And we also offer merch for the Fourth and Long podcast. I'm working on trying to get merch for the NFL podcast as well. That's going to take a little bit longer. But if you want podcast merch for the Fourth and Long podcast, that merch has been, it's been up on the website on the YouTube on here for a while. Feel free to buy some merch. And I've left down below my Twitter. If you have any fantasy football questions, any college football questions, just questions in general about anything, you can DM me on Twitter and I will reply to your Twitter, your DMs on Twitter after the podcast. And I think that's going to wrap up today's episode of the NFL podcast. Remember, tonight at 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock, we have the Fourth and Long podcast with me. I will see y'all then. Goodbye.